New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
Good morning and welcome to the Saturday Science of Mind and Spirit Conversation. I'm Reverend Z, and it is my pleasure to be here with you today to explore the wisdom, the teachings, and the way of life that is Science of Mind. And so I'm glad that everyone's here today. And as you know, this time of year, we're in the part of the program where we dip into the archives. So we dip into the archives, and so sit back and relax, and we're going to have a great conversation today. And if you're live, please send some comments, ask some questions. We thank you for that. It makes this an engaging proposition, and we look forward to be engaging this morning. And so today, we are looking at the Science of Mind November issue from 2012, A Kinship of Faith. Kinship of Faith. And so before we start, let's just do an invocation here to set the stage to bring forth the Spirit. And so as we open this lecture series today, looking at A Kinship of Faith, a moment where we begin to look at and explore the connectedness of all things, knowing that faith, that idea that there is something beyond ourselves that connects us to a divine and universal presence to enlighten our lives and the lives of others. And so we call forth that spirit right now, knowing that it is here, that it is with us always, and that it guides us to a place that is higher and higher and higher. And so it is, amen. And so it is, amen. And so if you see here, as I said, we're looking at the November Science of Mind magazine from 2012. And at that point, the idea for the magazine for this month was A Kinship of Faith. And so as we look around the world today and we see the different challenges that we are faced, this idea of a kinship of faith in a belief that we are connected, that we are one thing called life, and that as we continue to allow this to expand and move us in a direction of love and connectedness, we do so with this idea of how do we begin to be the change that we wish to be in the world? How do we begin to be the change which we seek in the world? And so we want to say good morning to all those who are jumping in, and good morning to Linda. How are you? Glad you're here. And good morning to Shay. Everyone else, please feel free to jump in and ask a question or make a statement or a comment. And so as we look at this kinship of faith today, coming from this whole theme that is the November 2012 issue, I want to start with this idea that I think puts a lot in perspective here, and that is this. Let me get this slide up right here, right now. And let me make that bigger so you can see it. And then we'll come back. So, in the very first issue of the Science of Mind magazine in 1927, Dr. Holmes said, I believe that the universal spirit, which is God, operates through a universal mind, which is the law of God. And I am surrounded by this creative mind, which receives the direct impress of my thoughts and acts upon it. Receives the direct impulse of my mind and act upon it, and your mind and acts upon it. And so here is the rub, if you will. Our thoughts, our ideas of how the world operates, the challenges that we face, the joy that we receive has a seed in the mind that allows us to create, to cultivate a way of looking at life, of experiencing life, and engaging in life that allows us to be cognizant, aware with all there is. And so when we look at some of the things that we try to move beyond, it is this idea of that seed thought that allows us to move beyond this, to move beyond this. Now, when we look at this idea of a kinship of faith, this idea that's in the magazine, and it says this: when we resonate with the universal oneness within us, we discover the kinship between souls and create miracles. In that realm, there is no us and other, only love. Only love. Now, I would submit today we need love more than any other thing. And as we can see from the very beginning of the Science of Mind magazine, and in doubt, the whole ground of foundation for our teachings is this idea of presenting an idea in mind that connects us to all things and that shares this oneness, not us, we, them, they. It is a oneness that defies name, that defies any kind of identity, because the moment we do that, we begin to separate and create factions. We begin to separate and create division. And there is no division in oneness. There is no division in allness, right? And so, as Dr. Tracy says here, great reminder and reconnection to this very basic principle. This very basic principle. And what is that principle? There it is. There is a oneness, one mind, one law that's creative. It surrounds us, and we have the ability to engage it, to move with it, to act in it. And when we're able to do that, our lives change, our circumstances change. We begin to look and act differently in everything we do in life. And so when we're able to really step into this idea of the universal oneness within us, you see, we begin to move in a way that allows us not only freedom, which some may say is the highest epitome or the highest expression of man, but I would say it is that ability to understand our humanness, our ability to connect at a level that is undeniable, because regardless of race, creed, color, sexual orientation, ethnicity, beyond any of that, there is a humanness in each and every one of us. We each have a heart. We each have blood coursing through our veins. We each take in oxygen. And no matter how we may describe ourselves or try to separate ourselves from each other, as some people do, that similarity, that connectedness is always there. You can't change it, which speaks to the oneness of life, which speaks to the kinship of faith. And what is that faith? The faith, not a belief, not a hope, but a faith that will lead us to a knowingness that there is one universal principle that connects us all, that allows us to live, breathe, and have our being in an infinite mind of intelligence that allows us to create beyond our wildest dreams. Just take that for a minute and sit with it. To create beyond our wildest dreams. And so we want to say good morning to the Reverend Dr. Raymond Anderson for jumping in. Good morning. Glad you're here. So think about this. As we think about this oneness, we think about this oneness, this connectedness, this kinship of faith, which really means the kinship of all things. Now, notice I said all things and not everyone or everybody, because we have a kinship with the plants. We have a kinship with the animals. We have a kinship with the rocks and minerals of this planet. And if you don't believe that, next time you take a multivitamin or next time you go and give blood at the doctor and they start giving you a breakdown, they say, oh, well, you got so much zinc in your body and you got some iron in your body, all the way up to the oxygen that the plants disseminate when they take in the carbon dioxide that we let out. There's a connectedness. There's a oneness. There is no separation. And the sooner we begin to move beyond that idea, which only is stemmed in separation and not oneness, we will begin to create the world that we're looking for. Raymond says this: since the divine is the all, that which we call our humanness must always be our divine or divinity expressing. And we are either aware of it or unaware of it. Well said. Well said. Because that points back to that we are surrounded by this. And if we have no awareness that we're surrounded by it, inevitably we will misuse it. We will not use it as it is meant to be, or it has the capacity to be used. Now, when we take this to the next step, we have this, right? Oh, I went too far there. Let me go back one. In that issue of the magazine, we have this thought. What I believe Ernest Holmes would add to this is that we are indeed connected. At the root of all happiness is to act as if it is so. Now we're talking about this one mind that takes things and respond to us in kind. And so when we look at it in that manner, Dr. Holmes is saying that is the root of all happiness. That is the root of all goodness in the world. But he says, Dr. Holmes also gives us a way that can be found in all his teachings. We heal that thought of separation or disease or conflict or just the thought of the alien other in our own minds first. In fact, all of the science of mind spiritual healing is about healing one's own thoughts before anyone else's. It's the ultimate practice in walking your talk. The ultimate practice in walking your talk. Now, how many times have we seen or heard, do what I say, not what I do, right? A little tongue in cheek, right? Why, if you're giving me advice and you can't even live by it, why should I? And here's Dr. Holmes is saying, we must walk our talk. We must be the example, the change, the force in the world that we wish to see. And so if we can start there and begin to look at our own biases and look at our own inconsistencies. There's a verse in a song by the great late Bill Withers that says we all have our own confusion. And so when we allow ourselves to be immersed in the mind of God, we can work through these confusions. We can work through any appearance of separation by beginning to live our lives in a way that is consistent with what we teach, with what we believe. Because we know that in those moments, our clearest idea of who we are, of what we are, shines through. It shines through. Excuse me. And so I want to stop right there, see if anyone has any questions or comments. Basically, looking at this idea of a kinship of faith, and inevitably a kinship of all things, because there is only one thing that's ever present, and that is the mind, the power, the intelligence of God, the thing itself. And so when we begin to tap into that, when we begin to allow that to be the guiding light within our force, then we're able to move in harmony, in peace, and in love. And now once we can accept that idea, the next thing or the inevitable next step of that is this, is finding some common ground. Marianne Williams says this, who is this best-selling author. She's running for office this year, president. But she says this, what we need is not more religion. What we need is a common spiritual experience. But what would this alien this common experience? Now, when we think about this common experience, we talked a little bit about it at the very beginning. There's a common experience. There's anybody that's walking on this planet that's human, they're breathing air. Whether it's on their own or with some assistance, there's a commonness there. So when we begin to look at this kinship of faith, and I dare move it beyond that theme of that particular issue of Science of Mind magazine from 2012, this kinship of all things, because we know we don't produce oxygen. So we have to be respective of those things that do, plants. And when we can move in that kind of way, the common ground of all things, we begin to live life differently. We make different choices. We ask different questions, right? We don't begin to even think about what's different between you and I. What's different between black and white or up and down? I mean, questions that have a basis in how do I separate myself from you. Now, sometimes those can be used in a question of understanding. But often now, because these words have been so I don't know, I don't want to, have been so overused, let me say it that way, that automatically we begin to have a thought automatically. When I say the word battle, I would say 8 out of 10 minds have already gone to a place of fighting, right? And how often do we use this word battle? Puts us in a, even if we're just joking, it puts us in a tense moment. It allows us to start thinking about, how do I get over this person? How do I beat this person? But when we're looking at a kinship of faith, a kinship of oneness, we don't look for that. We begin to look for commonality. We look for ways to overcome challenges together that's going to affect all of us. And as we continue to move in today's atmosphere, if you will, one question that is facing all of us Where are we headed? What is your idea of where we're headed? What is your vision of where we're headed? Because we know that if we have no point of rendezvous, we will end up anywhere. When I was taking my sailing class and to get my sailing license, and we had this part of the course that was navigation. The first thing that we were taught was if you are off by 1 degree, you will be off by, I think it was 10 minutes from your destination. And each degree after that, you begin to get further and further. So when you get to like 5 degrees off or 10 degrees off, you could be 20, 30 miles off base from the point of contact that you were looking to make. And that's all based on where are you looking? What is what focus, what compass point, what rendezvous point are you looking to connect to? Think about that. You know, they say a ship in the ocean without a rudder is just wandering to and fro. Are you wandering to and fro? I know I sometimes am wandering to and fro because I get caught up in all of the distractions of life, all of the things that keep us moving in a way that, you know, that just not working, just doesn't serve us. And sometimes you people say it doesn't serve us anymore. And I would make the suggestion it never served us. It never served us. And as Linda says here, we have to look at this upward spiral of life, this evolutionary unfolding. Because when we can do that, the vista becomes bigger. The way we see becomes clearer. And as Raymond has said here, where there is no vision, the people will perish. We know that inevitably. And so I would submit, as presented in this magazine of 2012 of November, there's this, I took this from the Daily Affirmations. And it is this whole idea of surrender. This whole idea of surrender. And I apologize on the size of this, but I'm gonna open it up here and read it. So it says, your life is not a problem to be solved, but a gift to be opened. You cannot heal anyone of his troubles if it is the result of some mental attitude which we or he will not surrender. Will not surrender. And so we have this piece by Terry Cole Whitaker talks about, you know, when things fall apart or when things begin to create a way of life that doesn't support us anymore, we have to surrender. We have to surrender. And right now, it's pretty apparent, I would say, that the way we're living life is not supporting us. When we look back over the last 3-4 years, and we look at what COVID, this pandemic of COVID has highlighted, if nothing else, and there are many things that it has highlighted, but it has highlighted this idea of all of the current systems that are pitted against each other, that are not working in this idea of kinship, are falling apart. Whether it's the educational system, the religious system, the political system, the economic system, the global climate system, it's all beginning to unravel because they are pitted against one another. They are not being looked at as one, a oneness that supports everything. And that we have to begin to understand the levers that are being pulled, and know that no lever is pulled in isolation. Nothing happens in isolation. So when we begin to think outside this box of pitting one thing against another, we see the results. We see the results, but we also see the results in many examples in life of what happens when things work together as one. And one of the best examples, I believe, is something that with us every day, all day, and that is our human body. In our body, there are many different systems. We have the respiratory system, the limbic system, the cardiovascular system. And independently, all these things have their own function and ways of supporting the oneness of the body. Now, if you ever see a part of the body that's in conflict or fighting against another aspect of the body, that's called disease. And it manifests in many different ways. But when those things are working in a harmony of oneness and allowing each and every one to have their place, to know when to yield and when to surrender and when to allow another part of the wholeness to step forth, we have this beautiful, beautiful thing called life. And that's what's prime. That's what should be prime. Not my idea over yours. Not this whole thing about my theology versus your theology. I mean, at the end of the day, that makes great point counterpoint, but it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the sustaining of life. Dr. Tracy says this: life keeps showing up or showing us it is time for some major changes if we believe in and want to experience kinship. If we not and see, that's one of the key aspects of our teachings. We live by choice. This is a choice built world. You have to make a decision on who you are, how you intend to show up in the world. If you don't do that, we might as well just get in a room and stay there. And I know that may sound harsh, but you're either part of the solution or you're part of the problem, right? And right now we have an abundance of problems that we don't need to be causing any ourselves. We need to be figuring out how we work together in kinship, in oneness, to solve some of the issues that are facing us. Because if we don't, we will find ourselves in a situation that leaves us wanting. I was in a conversation the other day, and we were talking about some of the issues that are going on in the Middle East and how those things and the same things that are going over in the Ukraine. And we're looking at all these different types of rights and this and that. And I was reminded of a statement that Malcolm X made to the United Nations when the whole idea of civil rights came up. And Malcolm said this. Malcolm said, human rights, the civil rights is a very important point. But even that can be used to separate, because the civil rights of one group may not necessarily be considered the civil rights of another group. But when we can take this down to human rights, Malcolm's point was we need to focus on human rights, because there is no separation in that among humans. Now, we're not trying to separate ourselves from the earth or from the planet, but it appears that most of the challenges that we are facing on earth is due to humans. And that's because we are not looking at each other in kinship. We're looking at each other in conflict and separation. And so that idea of human rights is that one spiritual aspect that keeps us together, that keeps us flowing, that keeps us moving in a direction so that we manifest our dreams. But we are often distracted. We often get distracted. And so what we need to do there is I love this idea. This was a point that I kind of took from Dr. Ken Gordon in this thing of when the healing occurs in that same magazine. It's one of the key distractions that keep us from living life in harmony and love is the inordinate amount of time we spend arguing about theology. You know, this study of the divine, this study of religious belief. And he sums up that article by saying, it's time for us to shed religiosity and return to the golden rule, which exists in every tradition. Only then will we be capable of seeing past the distractions of a few and attain the goal of the many. Ernest Holmes said, when your faith in God is greater than your faith in the condition, a healing occurs. I would suggest that when our faith in God is greater than our faith in our religion, a healing will occur. And that's what we need now. We look at the world and some of the problems, or a lot of the problems, if not most of the problems, stem from this separation of a religious or ideological or philosophical difference, which is basically a perspective of the world. It's like if you were a kid, if you had one of these kaleidoscope, you know, sometimes in science class you could make them. You take a couple of colored rocks and you take one of the cones that that was used for the paper towels, and you could turn it, and it would create an infinite number of designs with the few rocks. The rocks didn't change, but the perspective of what those rocks did together, of how they worked together, did change as you begin to rotate the lens and see life from a different perspective. And inevitably, no matter what turn you made on that kaleidoscope, it was all beautiful because it was still working together in oneness. That's when the healing in our mind can occur in that same fashion, when we see no matter how we turn it, there's still a beautiful splendor of what life is and who we are and how we operate in the world. And so, you know, as we continue to move in the direction of our dreams, as we continue to look at this idea of what it means to be in kinship, let each of us begin to think, how can I contribute? What can I do that will allow this thing called life to be more fully expressed, to be more fully enjoyed? Linda says this: determining where to place my attention in the chaos of the conditions of today's world is often challenging. That's when I must go inward to the touchstone of oneness. So beautifully said, because that's what it requires us to do, to go within, to look at the possibilities, just like in that kaleidoscope. How can I keep turning this lens to get a view, not ignoring things that may not satisfy us or appeal to us, but how can I keep turning this lens so that I begin to see the possibilities of working together? This statement here, I think, is key as we begin to look at how we will experience life, how we want to experience life. The thing itself within us works as a process of unfolding. So when we set out to achieve something, right away, we can picture ourselves doing the new thing. But in order to actually do it, here are some examples. A series of steps is gradually, incrementally taken as we master the fretboard or the paintbrush. Another way of putting this is, when we involve ourselves with an idea in order to then evolve the idea, into a tangible form. Into a tangible form. So the question becomes, what are you trying to create? What are you looking to create in this world that works for all? This inherent kinship of this whole planet. What's your vision? What are you looking to achieve? What are you looking to bring forth that maybe no one else has seen? Because everything we need is there. We just must lean into it and allow it to happen. And so in closing, I like to take this idea and this quote from Emma Carter Hopkins and a couple of the quotes that were in the magazine on this whole idea of spiritual awareness. A spiritual awareness. Now, Emma Curtis Hopkins says here, there is a bond between us and all there is. There's a bond between us and all there is. And that's what we must begin to focus on, is this bond, this kinship, this oneness that allows us to work together, to be together, to create a whole entity. Carl Jung puts it this way: your vision will only become clear when you look into your heart. Who looks outside dreams? Who looks inside's awakening? Now, we need more awakening today, I think, than most times in human history, I would say, because now we have the power, the intelligence, and the technology, are aware of the intelligence. The intelligence has always been here to create problems that we will not easily overcome. And so when we look at this from the Science of Mind magazine, it says, if we wish to come to the Spirit for the healing of our wounds, let us come in peace and with spontaneous joy, for the Spirit is joy. Let us come with thanksgiving also, for a thankful heart is in harmony with life. A thankful heart is in harmony with life. And Dr. Raymond puts this here by Bertrand Russell, and I thank you for that kind reminder. For those who want to understand what giving and living is, go check out the new Netflix movie on Bertrand Russell. I think it just dropped yesterday. It's on Netflix. Brilliant work with Dr. King and a lot of others, and was the mastermind in a lot of these things. But in some ways, it shows you this whole idea of separation. But it shows when you can look beyond that you can really have some creations that are long lasting and allows everything to work in harmony. And Dr. Raymond has put up this link to get there. I mean, it's fascinating individual. I would encourage you each to watch that. So that's all she wrote. I don't think we need to write anything else. The paramount point that we need to make today is everyone, everything that you see, hear, touch, or feel is in kinship with each of us. And as we go into this Thanksgiving week, and we're going to be seeing relatives and having these relationships, and in some cases, some may be a little antagonistic. Let's be grateful. Let's be thankful. Let's be joyful about life, knowing that we're all connected. There's a oneness of life. And as the saying of Sitting Bull was, you know, we are part of the web of life. We are not this thing that's separated. So everything we do to the web, we do to ourselves, because we are one. There is a oneness of life. And so let us begin to think beyond this idea of separation and look at kinship as we move into this time of Thanksgiving. So I appreciate and thank everyone for being here. If you have any questions, Dr. Iman said, blessings and thanks for the day. This is what we need to do in Thanksgiving. So please go out and do it. Right? That's our charge. Go and make something happen. Make something come alive. And so if there's any questions or any comments that we have before we close out, if not, I want to thank everyone for spending this time with us this morning and being a part of New Thought Media Network as we continue to create a platform, to create a avenue for serious conversation and dialogue about how to live in kinship. And so we look forward to the next time we meet. I'm not sure who the next presenter is next week, but it's always good. It doesn't matter. Just tune in. Tune in. And so we want to thank you for your support and your comments and join us every every Saturday, where we can begin to create this world that truly works for all. And with that, I bid you farewell. Have a wonderful day. Peace and blessings. And so it is.